imagine for a second that you are just sitting at your laptop, right?
Hmm.
And you are about to hit publish on a brand new piece of content.
Like a newsletter or maybe a massive corporate white paper.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Or even just a long social media thread. You probably think of that click as just, well, sharing a thought with the world.
Right. Just putting your ideas out there.
Yeah. But what if the second you hit publish, you aren't just sharing a thought, you're actually minting a legal liability?
Oh, it's a huge liability.
Like, what if every single thing you post is suddenly carrying the exact same weight and, the exact same risk as a broadcast from a massive multinational television network?
Well, the barrier to entry for publishing is, it's essentially zero today.
Right.
But the cost of getting it wrong has really never been higher.
Yeah.
And when you frame it that way, a lot of casual creators might suddenly feel a chill down their spine.
Okay, let's unpack this, because we are diving into a stack of sources today that, honestly, it fundamentally rewrites how you should look at the content you create and consume every single day.
It really does.
So our mission for this deep dive is to figure out what conscious content governance actually means for you.
Right.
Whether you are a digital nomad working from a beach somewhere, or a massive influencer, or, just sitting in a cubicle at a Fortune 500 enterprise.
It applies to everyone.
Exactly. And our guiding star here is this really fascinating May 4, 2026 LinkedIn article by Maurizio Rossari. It's titled Why Sephorios? The Conscious Data Lifecycle for Every Media Company.
And we're also pulling some context from his broader catalog of writings from early 2026 just to see the big picture.
Right, because Rossari comes out swinging with this massive assertion. He says that in the digital age, content is currency, and therefore literally everyone is now a media company.
Which means no one gets a pass just because they're an individual. If you operate in the digital economy, you are a media company. And operating as one without a rigorous structural framework isn't just risky anymore.
Yeah.
It is an existential liability.
But, calling a freelance graphic designer who's just posting a blog about their workflow a media company, that feels a bit dramatic at first glance, right?
It does sound extreme, yeah.
How is a solo creative facing the exact same existential risks as a legacy news outlet?
Well, because that solo creative is navigating the exact same digital ecosystem.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, they are subject to the exact same algorithmic scrutiny. So to understand the risk, we really have to look at the foundational layer of this entire framework.
Which is data.
Exactly. Data. Rossari outlines something he calls the conscious data lifecycle.
Okay.
Because he argues that for the past few years, the tech world has treated data purely as fuel.
Right, like fuel for user growth, engagement.
And most importantly, fuel to train AI.
Yeah, obviously.
But Rossari flips that completely. He says data isn't just fuel. It is a literal liability if you do not manage its entire life cycle.
So if you don't know what your data is doing, leaving it unmanaged is basically like, I don't know, leaving a lit match near a puddle of gasoline.
That is exactly the reality of the 2026 internet.
Wow.
Blindly feeding unverified data into your content pipeline, whether that is an AI agent or just your own research process, it risks catastrophic privacy breaches, misinformation spirals, and honestly, ruinous regulatory fines.
And this is where this SYRAG platform comes in, right?
Yes, exactly.
So to clarify what that actually is for you listening, we are talking about a conscious content governance platform.
Think of it as a specialized operating system for your data and AI workflows.
Okay.
And it essentially bakes verification directly into the process.
Right. It tracks data through 4 very specific conscious steps, right? Creation, usability, persistence, and reuse.
That's right.
Let's break those down.
Yeah.
Because looking at those 4 words, creation, usability, persistence, reuse, it immediately makes me think of the food supply chain.
Oh, that's a great way to look at it.
Right. Let's use a high-end restaurant as an analogy. Creation would be the farm.
Right.
A restaurant can't just buy a steak out of the back of a van. They need a verified manifest of exactly where that raw meat came from.
What's fascinating here is how seamlessly your food supply chain analogy actually maps onto Rossari's digital framework.
Really?
Yeah, because in the SYRAG's framework, creation literally means you are documenting the origin and the context of the digital data.
Okay.
You cannot have mysterious data just, appearing out of thin air.
Yeah.
You need to know the specific farm it came from.
Got it. And then comes the second step, which is usability.
Right.
So staying with the restaurant, usability is asking, like, is this meat legally allowed to be served to humans? Does it meet the health codes?
Exactly. In the digital realm, usability establishes clear ethical boundaries and legal permission.
Oh, I see.
Just because you have access to a data set, that doesn't mean you have the right to feed it into a generative model.
Or publish it.
Exactly. You have to prove you have the clearance to use it in that specific way.
Okay. Then we hit the third step, persistence, which sounds like the restaurant's refrigeration logs.
Yeah.
Like proving that the meat was kept at the right temperature for the entire journey.
Functionally, that is exactly what it is.
Okay.
Persistence in this framework isn't just about, saving a file to a hard drive so you don't lose it.
Right.
It means secure storage with concrete cryptographic audit trails.
Wow. Okay.
So if a regulator or an audience member questions a piece of content 3 years from now, you must be able to prove its structural integrity hasn't been tampered with.
Since it was stored.
Exactly.
And finally, the fourth step is reuse. So that would be like the recipe history.
Right?
If the chef uses the leftover verified meat to make a stew the next day, there still needs to be a transparent log connecting that stew back to the original farm manifest.
Yes. Unverified data is essentially digital food poisoning.
Wow, digital food poisoning.
Right. Razari isn't just writing a philosophy paper about how we should be careful here. He is operationalizing the health inspection.
Oh, that's a good way to put it.
SYRAG ensures that every single piece of content you produce, every digital meal you serve to your audience, can be perfectly traced back to its raw data foundations.
So if someone gets sick on a piece of financial misinformation you published,
You can pull the audit trail and see exactly which data source was contaminated.
that takes content creation from this completely ethereal, vibes-based process and turns it into a hard science.
It really does.
But that brings up a massive logistical question.
Okay, what's that?
Let's say I have perfectly clean, verified data. The origin is documented, the permissions are clear, the digital meat is safe.
Right.
In 2026, I am inevitably going to feed that clean data into an AI to help me write an article or generate an infographic or, summarize a dense report.
Right, everybody uses it.
What happens then? Because AI models, by their very nature, are notoriously unpredictable.
They are.
Even with clean ingredients, the chef can still hallucinate a terrible dish.
Exactly. Which is why having clean data is really only half the battle.
Okay.
Once you know where the data comes from, you have to govern the engine that is actually processing it.
Right.
Razari calls this next conceptual layer the algorithmic trust perimeter.
The algorithmic trust perimeter.
Yeah.
It sounds like an electric fence for a rogue generative model.
That is actually a very apt visualization.
Yeah.
Yeah. The trust perimeter consists of strict algorithmic transparency protocols, decision traceability, and ethical alignment checks.
Wow. Okay.
We're essentially creating a fenced-in, highly monitored computational environment.
So inside this perimeter, AI decisions aren't just happening in a void.
Exactly. They are mathematically verifiable and explainable.
Okay.
You can only deploy AI confidently if you have a system forcing it to show its work and preventing it from stepping outside those established boundaries.
Okay, I have to push back on this.
Okay.
On behalf of anyone listening who uses AI daily to brainstorm or create, if we put a perimeter around AI and force every single prompt and output through, ethical alignment checks and traceability audits,
Right.
aren't we just putting a straitjacket on it? Well,
Yeah.
doesn't this completely kill the speed, the spontaneity, and the wild creativity that made AI so magical to begin with?
I hear that a lot.
It feels like we are taking a racehorse and turning it into a heavily regulated tractor.
That tension you were describing is really the defining conflict of this entire era of media.
Right.
To understand why this so-called straitjacket is actually necessary, we have to look at another article Razari published.
Okay.
This was shortly before the main one we were testing. On April 13, 2026, he published a piece titled SYRAG, When AI Stops Performing Certainty and Starts Exposing Reality.
Performing certainty.
Yeah.
That is an incredibly sharp phrase.
It perfectly diagnoses why the old magic of AI was actually a massive trap.
Really? How so?
Well, he argues that early discussions about AI were entirely dominated by speed, fluency, and spectacle.
Oh, for sure. We loved the magic trick of typing a vague sentence and getting a beautifully formatted, highly confident essay in 2 seconds.
Exactly. But that AI was often a black box, hallucinating, plausible-sounding lies.
Yeah.
It was performing certainty, but it wasn't rooted in fact.
Okay.
Rosari argues that the goal for a modern media company cannot be speed or spectacle anymore. The paradigm has shifted entirely.
So the magic trick is basically a liability now.
A massive one. The goal now is to shift AI from being a flashy, unpredictable black box to a precision tool that exposes verifiable reality.
I like that. Exposing verifiable reality.
Yeah, you aren't putting a straitjacket on the AI to punish it. You're putting a harness on it so it can pull the plow of actual truth.
Okay.
The trust perimeter ensures that the AI's output is accountable to reality, step by step.
I can see how, in a corporate setting, a hallucination outside the perimeter is just a lawsuit waiting to happen. But inside the perimeter, it becomes a certified asset.
Exactly.
But that leads to the obvious next question.
Okay.
If we are building a fence to ensure the AI exposes reality, who decides where the fence goes?
Right?
Like, who writes the rules for this perimeter? You can't just declare, my AI is ethical now, and expect global regulators to just agree with you.
You absolutely cannot. And if every media company invented their own bespoke ethics, we would be right back in the Wild West.
Totally.
This is why governance cannot be invented from scratch by, one guy in a server room.
Right.
SYRAG addresses this by integrating what they call external procedures directly into the workflow.
Meaning the software is talking to outside rulebooks.
Precisely. We are talking about strict automated compliance with international content regulations.
Okay.
Privacy laws like GDPR, emerging cross-border AI governance frameworks, and external audit protocols.
Wow.
The system aligns your day-to-day content creation with global legal standards in real time.
So the system itself acts as the health inspector, constantly checking your AI chef's work against international law before the dish ever leaves the kitchen.
Exactly. And the dish that finally leaves the kitchen brings us to the ultimate outcome of this entire process.
Which is?
Structured, verifiable content.
Okay.
By pushing your cleanly tracked data through an algorithmic trust perimeter, which is governed by international legal standards, your content fundamentally transforms.
How so?
Well, it is no longer an ephemeral, fleeting post on a social feed. It becomes a lasting, trustworthy asset.
Okay.
We are talking about metadata-rich publications, verifiable claims, and completely audit-ready documentation baked right into the file itself.
Now, here's where it gets really interesting, because I want to make this highly concrete for the listener.
Sure.
Let's go back to that digital nomad Rosari explicitly mentions in his article.
Okay, the nomad.
Let's say we have a solo creator living in Bali, making travel guides and financial advice content for expats.
Very common scenario.
Right. Logistically, how does a solo YouTuber actually create a metadata-rich publication?
Well,
Are they attaching a massive spreadsheet to every video they upload? Why do they even need audit-ready documentation for a vlog?
because the internet of 2026 is an entirely different legal landscape.
Okay.
Without this structured verification, that solo creator is flying completely blind into a storm of regulatory fines.
Wait, really?
Yeah. Let's say this nomad uses a generative model to summarize local Indonesian tax laws for their blog.
Okay.
If that AI hallucinates a tax loophole that doesn't exist, the host country, or even their home country's financial regulators, can come after them for spreading financial misinformation.
Wow. So they can't just throw up their hands and say, oops, my generative AI made a mistake. I'm just a guy with a laptop.
No, ignorance of the algorithm is no longer a legal defense.
Meh.
Furthermore, they face a complete loss of audience trust.
Right.
In an ocean of deepfakes and AI-generated slop, audiences are deeply skeptical of everything they read.
For good reason.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But if that digital nomad is utilizing a framework like SYRAG, their personal brand transforms.
How does it transform?
Every claim in their video has metadata proving its source. And not as a clunky spreadsheet, but as a seamless, layered digital signature.
Oh, that makes more sense.
Yeah. The AI they use to translate those local laws has a traceable lineage showing it operated within a legally compliant perimeter.
Right.
So if a regulator audits them, they don't panic. They simply hand over the digital ledger.
They elevate themselves from a random, unverified voice on the internet to a certified, trusted media company.
Precisely.
They basically get a digital blue check mark, but instead of just verifying their identity, it verifies the absolute structural truth of their content.
And that distinction is vital. It elevates the conversation from just a single software tool to a geopolitical reality.
Geopolitical.
Yeah, zooming out from the platform itself, we have to look at whether this is just a neat feature list for a product or if it is indicative of a massive shift in the global landscape.
Well, looking through the stack of sources we have, Rosari has been extremely busy throughout 2026.
He has.
And he is clearly operating at a geopolitical level, not just pitching software.
Right.
Because in April, he wrote about participating in a United Nations informal consultation.
Yes.
In March, he submitted a research proposal to the Center for Financial Inclusion about a human-centric approach to AI.
He's everywhere.
Yeah, he is actively writing about navigating the 2026 AI compliance landscape and dealing with the black box problem on a global scale.
And the venues he's operating in tell you everything about the stakes.
Right.
I mean, the UN is involved because cross-border AI misinformation threatens global stability.
Oh, for sure.
You need a mathematical baseline for truth just to conduct international diplomacy now.
Right.
And the Center for Financial Inclusion cares because an unverified AI hallucinating a reason to deny someone a loan ruins lives.
Absolutely. So
Yeah.
what does this all mean? When you synthesize the UN consultations, the financial inclusion research, and the strict rules of this conscious data lifecycle, what is the actual macro trend staring us in the face?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, we find the core thesis in an article Rosari published on March 2nd.
Okay.
The title is essentially the defining paradigm shift of 2026. It's called Why Verification Trumps Trust.
Verification trumps trust.
Yeah.
That feels like the eulogy for the early internet.
It really is. The era of blindly trusting corporate knowledge or trusting a creator's good intentions or trusting a sleek AI output is officially over.
Yeah.
Trust is an emotional human concept. It is inherently fragile.
Right.
And the explosion of deep fakes and algorithmic hallucinations just destroyed it entirely.
We've seen that happen.
Exactly. We have entered the era of certified answers and concrete content. Rosari is pointing out that we no longer have the luxury of assuming information is good based on vibes.
Right. No more vibes.
We must demand mathematical structural proof. The new global baseline, from a solo podcaster in Bali to a delegate at the United Nations, is that if you cannot prove the entire life cycle of your thought,
From the raw data origins
to the AI processing perimeter,
to the final structured asset.
exactly, if you can't prove all of that, your thought is practically worthless in the digital economy.
It is a complete inversion of how Silicon Valley used to operate.
Complete inversion.
The old mantra was, move fast and break things.
Right.
The new reality is, move consciously and document absolutely everything.
Yes.
So what does this mean for you listening right now?
It's the big question.
Whether you are steering a massive enterprise or you are an individual creator trying to build a resilient personal brand, treating your data as a conscious life cycle is no longer optional.
Not at all.
The days of treating data as just invisible exhaust from your daily tasks are gone. And this isn't just about dodging compliance fines or staying out of legal trouble, though that is the immediate benefit. It is fundamentally about turning your digital footprint into an audited, verifiable asset.
Exactly.
In an ecosystem completely saturated with synthetic media and AI hallucinations, your ability to structurally prove your work is the only thing that separates you from the noise.
That's right.
You are a media company now, and it is time to start governing your content like one.
And as we embrace this new architecture of digital truth, this raises an important question.
Okay.
Rosari's framework ensures that every single piece of content can be perfectly traced back to its data foundations through a strict algorithmic trust perimeter.
Right.
We are building a necessary world of absolute verifiable safety.
Yeah.
But if we reach a point where every digital asset must be audit-ready and mathematically verified from inception?
What happens to the concept of the happy accident in human creativity?
Exactly. If an untraceable, purely subjective, wildly spontaneous human thought becomes a structural liability in this new media ecosystem,
Wow.
will we eventually have to choose between total verifiable safety and spontaneous human expression?
Wow. Are we auditing the magic right out of the creative process?
It's a real concern.
That is a heavy, brilliant question to leave off on, and definitely something you are going to be chewing on the next time you sit down at your keyboard.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for joining us as we explored the edges of the conscious data lifecycle and really the future of truth itself. Keep questioning the black boxes, keep demanding verification, and we will see you next time as we take another deep dive.